Well, hello and welcome to volume 11 of Drink the Music. I'm Brian here, as always, with Michaela. And Michaela, a couple years ago, it was 2019, we went to a concert together and we saw Beck and Cage the Elephant perform. So we put those albums up to a vote on Patreon, and Beck won. But it was kind of weird. It was weird timing, in my mind subconsciously, because we just went to a wedding with people that we also went to the concert with this weekend. So the timing was right. But when it was time to come to pick an album from Beck, I mean, you have like the one of the greats, right? Odelay, that has all of like the Beck bangers.
Mm.
You have Sea Change, which is another highly regarded record from Beck. You've got Midnight Vultures, which I think was nominated for Album of the Year. So there were a lot of good ones, but finally broke through in 2014 with Morning Phase, which did, spoiler, go on to win Album of the Year. But I wanted to talk about it, Michaela, because you and I, if people have been listening to the podcast, know we've been doing a lot of traveling, spending a lot of time in cars, spending a lot of time in planes. And to me, something as atmospheric and beautiful is really suited for the road here in Morning Phase. So I don't know, Michaela, let's talk about Beck here for just a second. We're kids of the 90s. We know those songs, right? Loser, two turntables and a microphone, where it's at. We knew
That's
Beck,
right.
but what about Morning Phase?
So I hadn't really heard Morning Phase much. I think that when we saw them in concert, this had not come out yet, or maybe there were a couple singles that came out, because I remember some songs that I hadn't heard before, and I'm pretty sure they were from this album. But there was a lot going on during that concert, because it was the first time that we had met our friend. So there was a lot of conversations happening, but I remember being really overwhelmed with that atmospheric sound. And I was like, what is this? And I think it was you who was like, this is the new album, Michaela, where have you been? And so I remember listening to it then, and being kind of knocked out by just how calming and soothing it is. And every song, or every album kind of has a mood, right? And Beck is really well known for being really creative and just very original in kind of their musical aesthetic of what they're exploring. And every album kind of does a little something different. And this kind of knocked everything out of the park, in terms of it being different and special and kind of awesomely derived. And so that's one of the reasons I think why you have had it on vinyl for years. And it was an easy choice for us to come together and pick.
It was an easy choice, and this is the perfect album for your vinyl record setting, and we're going to talk about that here when we get into the album. But before we do that, let's catch everyone up on who is Beck. Who is Beck? What's Beck? What's a Beck, Michaela? Beck is Beck David Hansen, aka Beck, was born in 1970 in Los Angeles. As a teenager, the young Beck starts playing and learning music, primarily folk and country and blues music. His parents, his mom was an artist, his dad was a musician, so it made sense that he was going to go into some sort of artistic endeavor. So music was his one of choice there. Beck decides to go to New York City to try his hand at being a starving artist. Does that pretty well, starves as an artist, and goes back to LA to be a starving artist on the West Coast. But some good things are about to happen for Beck here. Gets kind of noticed in some just open mic night kind of things and performances by some talent scouts, and they give him a little bit of a hand in getting this song pressed onto vinyl. That song is Loser. It gets pressed onto 500 copies of a vinyl record, which is weird to think that song at one point was only on 500 vinyl records.
Right.
But those records made their way out to some radio stations, and basically just explodes Beck into the world, right? So it hits it big, it makes it up to number 10 on the Billboard charts. But it had all the makings, and Beck knew this, and Beck was very scared and very standoffish about that. He's like, I'm going to be a one-hit wonder. This is my one hit. This is the one-hit wonder. He was very protective of that, very scared of that, very kind of combative about it, almost to a fault. But that's okay, because he went home and said, I need to start writing albums that are, these linear kind of stories instead of just a collection of songs, which is what that first album was there. So he goes home, he comes up with Odelay, which comes out in 1996, Where It's At, A Devil's Haircut, New Pollution, three huge songs. And now now Beck is no longer a one-hit wonder. He is a multiple hit wonder, Grammy-winning artist. In fact, 3 Grammy wins and 2 nominations for Album of the Year for Odelay and then 2000's Midnight Vultures. But Beck would finally win that Grammy for Album of the Year in 2014 with Morning Phase.
Morning Phase, indeed. And this film, wow. And this album, when you look it up and if you're interested in what other people had to say about it, this was really regarded as kind of an answer to.
Yeah, it's kind of a companion piece to Sea Change.
Sea Change, yeah, sorry. Yeah. And so it's really interesting because if you listen to Sea Change, it definitely has a different vibe, but it's got this, I think it's interesting that you say that he's made the decision to tell an entire story rather than just a collection of songs, because I definitely felt that entire story kind of unravel and then kind of rebraid itself kind of halfway through and create its own ending. And we'll talk more about what I mean with that, but like I felt like every song was just kind of a continuation. And we talk a lot about how we consume music differently, right? And I love playlists, but I have really been trying for the purpose of this podcast to listen to music the way you listen to music, Brian, which is like you turn on your hi-fi and you put your vinyl on and you just sit there and listen to it from beginning to end, and you only get up when you have to turn it. And I think that is exactly how it was intended to be created with this particular album, because you will miss it. You will miss something if you just listen to the songs. Even if you're just kind of listening to them in order, it's much more powerful if you're sitting there and kind of experiencing this album.
Yeah, exactly. This album is as like exact and precise as an album could possibly be, and I'm very excited to talk about it and get your kind of reaction to it, Michaela, because I knew when we picked this one that this wasn't an album you were probably going to be very familiar with. So let's do this, Michaela. Let's take a quick break. We're gonna mix up Cocktail, which is going to be reminiscent of the feeling, the visuals, the nuance of this album. I'm going to do that. It's going to be delicious. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back to get this week's drink going.
So Brian, I love gin, and I really have you to thank for that, because I didn't gin, Marsha. But I think one of my favorite gins is a gin that you bought me, I think for my 40th birthday, because it's a beautiful color and it tastes lovely. And I have since drank that bottle. I mean, I don't think that bottle made it the first night that you gave it to me, but since then I have been a huge fan of Empress Gin, and I think that this cocktail concoction really pays homage to everything that is in this new album, or this album that we're talking about, because it's beautiful. It's got a lot of kind of, I don't know, esotericness to it. It's got lemonade. I mean, what could
yeah. Every good thing needs lemonade. When life gives you lemon, turn them into lemonade.
There you go.
Maybe that's the theme of the album. I don't know. That's a little too deep for me. Might be a bit of a stretch, but not far off. But yeah, I found this recipe, Michaela. It's called Light the Beam. It comes specifically from Empress Gin. There are a lot of other kind of imitators to Empress Gin now, making butterfly pea or gins out there. You can find one. There's some that are local to us. If you can't find the Empress, it is pretty widely distributed now, so you shouldn't have too much trouble finding that, or try one of your local ones. But basically, you're just doing it for that color. You just use regular gin too if you're just interested in getting the flavors here. But this is dead simple, Michaela. Fill up your Collins glass with some ice, and you're going to go with 1.5 ounces. Or you're going to go with 4 ounces of lemonade, and then you're going to just pour in this 1.5 ounces of the Empress Gin on top, and it's going to kind of float and hang out there on top for a little bit and kind of striate down, and it looks beautiful and kind of dreamlike, and kind of like this I don't know, like this dusk where the stars are about to come out, and it has it's gin and lemonade, so it's very simple, but it has kind of the subtle elegance to it. You get kind of those aromatic notes from the gin that are just there, kind of playing around around, kind of like this album, right? It's pretty straightforward, but the more you listen to it and the more you pay attention to it, you're like, there is a whole bunch of nuance here that's going on, which is really pretty magical. Now I did something else, Michaela. I had some lemonade, so I went ahead and made that, but I also have a bottle of Franklin and Son's Sicilian Lemon Tonic. So if you want to do a gin and tonic version of this, search some of that out. That is a pretty good tonic, nice and light and summery. So that's a way to go. But what do you think, Michaela? Gin and lemonade. That's pretty simple, but not too bad.
Not too bad at all. I think the key is going to be the type of lemonade that you use, right? If you're real fancy and bougie, you can make your own. You can buy your own. They have sparkling lemonade. I bet you could add that
probably
to
makes
it.
his own. Beck probably makes his
Beck
own.
probably makes his own, and it's like vegan and super great and made from like lemons that have only been kissed by the sun, like on odd days or something. I don't know. I mean, it would be that precise, right? Like right, and then delicious. So it really is going to kind of depend. If you I recommend seeking out like a real decent lemonade rather than using just kind of the basic stuff that you would give a child, because that's really going to help bring and add kind of nuance to this, because it is very nuanced. I mean, and again, Empress Gin, it is one of my favorite gins out there, not just because it's beautiful, but I really love the flavor profile. I really like that it's not super junipery and it's not super floral, but it's just floral enough, just delicate enough. This is really good. And it's refreshing, which is nice because we're going to be in this like emotional wasteland for, I don't know, the 55 minutes that this album is or something. So if you're going to do that, you want something comforting and beautiful to hold on to, and why not?
And why not, indeed? Yeah, absolutely. So mix up a Light the Beam, send us pictures because it's awfully pretty, and make sure you're going to have one in hand if you're going to be listening to Morning Phase with us. But now, Michaela, let's do this. Let's take a quick break. We'll mix up another one of these cocktails, and we'll be right back to chat about 2014's Morning Phase by Beck. All right, so the year was 2014. Beck Morning Phase comes out, Michaela, and it is an audible experience for sure. It reminds me of something you might hear at like a planetarium or something, as this thing gets started off here with Cycle. It's this string intro, and it feels like it's a part of like some documentary about like the vastness of space. It's a little existential. It makes you feel very small, very powerless to this sort of concert that Beck's going to be getting into, and it leads into the second track here, Morning, which opens on this acoustic guitar chord that bridges into the first song here of the album. The acoustic guitar chord, they had to have spent like 3 days tuning that thing. It is the most precise sounding guitar chord I've ever heard in my life. It's amazing. It sounds so good with headphones on, which is why this album, wins the Grammy for best audio engineering, which is pretty great. But Morning, it's a tale of dark nights and new beginnings, about a relationship that has, a chance to start over kind of every morning. It has a very stargazy kind of feeling, I think is what the kids say when they're talking about music and atmospheres like this. And so, kind of the way that the vocal pitch and emphasis on this morning, where his voice kind of rises up, it makes the morning feel very important.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I've got to say it was early. The sun was coming up as I was listening to this for the sake of the album. And it was a beautiful way for Cycle to just kind of slide effortlessly into the song that is Morning. The synthesization, it felt like a sunrise. And it sounded like a sunrise, amazing. And then of course it makes all the sense in the world that we have this song where you're waking up in the morning and having to make decisions about your day. I found it to be kind of a sorrowful, pensive tone to it, and really trying to decide. I mean, I think you can take this song two ways, right? Where if a relationship is going well, you're thinking about, how am I going to make this day continue to make it great? I'm going to go back to the beginning of when you're first in love and keep that feeling. Or if your relationship is on your last legs, you're like, man, can we start over? Should we start over? What do I want to do here? Right. And it was kind of really neat because I listened to this album a couple times, and the first time I listened to it, I really thought it was the second way. And then then I listened to it again and thought, well, maybe it's juxtaposed and it's actually the other, where it's more hopeful and more loving and kind of more positive, which is it sounds kind of both. And I thought that was something that was super genius about this particular song and the way
Mhm.
that this album just kind of sets off, because it's a choose your own adventure here in Morning Phase,
Yeah.
and in Beckland, right? And wherever you are in your life is probably exactly where this album is going to find you, and that is inspired music making. That is amazing.
Yeah, it's really kind of ambiguous, right? I mean, you get like in verse 2, it's saying, like we've worn it all down into something that couldn't be saved. You tore it all down and bury me underneath the weight, which is pretty heavy. But then, you get to kind of the next kind of the next little like hook bit, and it's like I let down my defenses this morning. It was just you and me, right? Like you still have like the chance to kind of rectify the situation. So if you want to look at it pretty darkly, you can. If you want to look at it as more hopeful or optimistic, you can. I think that the album itself here gets a little less optimistic as we roll through the tracks here.
Yeah.
Kind of going through the story, but that is Two Morning. It's a beautiful song, and then we get into one of the singles here, Hard as a Drum. So Beck actually performed this at the Grammys the year that this was nominated and won there. He performed it alongside of Chris Martin, fellow Drink the Music alum there from the Coldplay albums. It is Beck and Chris Martin. It's like a power couple right there for sure. There's kind of like this heartbeat, like percussion and a little churning bass groove that goes through there, and it's kind of like a very tragic poem of not charting your own path and living your own life. Right, you're kind of in the wheels of this life, and you're not able to do your own thing. It says, it's beating me down day after day. It's turning me around till all my days are drowning out, which is pretty sad. And it's kind of a tale about getting lost, like in the shuffle or the just kind of the day to day of living your life and not doing your own thing. And I think it's a nice little follow up to Morning there. Maybe as you're getting dressed, right, or having some coffee, you're really thinking about the way things are going.
Yeah. Yeah. What I think I really liked, it was this rhythmic pull that I felt to something kind of otherworldly in this. And that is when this instrumental kind of warmth. We talk about cool and warmth when it comes to color schemes and paintings, but I definitely felt like this was a warm song, in that you just felt wrapped in kind of a blanket. If
Mm-hmm.
music was a slow, in my notes, I have, if music was a slow burning blaze, this would be an ember, right? Like it's just this very, I don't know, kind of loving, lorn blanket that I felt wrapped in, which makes sense because it's atmospheric. It's supposed to cover you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you make a good point when you bring up the fact this is kind of like a slow burn, and we talk about that, with movies, when we're talking about movies and things, that sometimes these stories are really slow burns, and you have to, just kind of let the story just kind of slowly wash over you. And that's exactly what's happening here. This is a slow burn as slow burns go in terms of an album. And it's going to keeps right on carrying on throughout this whole uh, really kind of the first, I don't know, like 11 songs of that. We're kind of telling this story here. So we get into track number 4, which is Say Goodbye. It's one of my favorite songs here on the album. It's got like this finger pick guitar part that's pretty lovely sounding. And I love kind of these little, like very simple metaphors of all the way that, like in this relationship that you're saying goodbye, right, without actually saying it's saying things, the curtains are drawn, and she is gone, and it's saying, see the sleep and the quiet streets and things. So it's all like these little like visual metaphors of things that have, like, I don't know, for lack of a better example, because I'm not the genius of Beck here, but it's like all the things you do when you leave your house for the day. That doesn't necessarily say that you're leaving the house for the day, right? You close your
Mm-hmm.
curtains, you put change in your pocket, you do all those things before you leave for the day. So it's all these like nonverbal things here, and I really think that that's interesting kind of poetry here in track 4, Say Goodbye.
Yeah, I think when you take the lyrics in it of itself as a poem, it to me it was very much a relationship that maybe goodbye happened a long time ago, and for whatever reason attention wasn't paid to, maybe on both sides, right? Like somebody didn't know that they were letting somebody go. but it's not, this is just, the lyrics kind of move from this is how you say goodbye to this is how we say goodbye. And so both, like I said at the beginning of this, like it's an unraveling. This album seems to be like an unraveling of a relationship. And when, if you've had relationships, friendships, or romantic relationships in your life, when you really look back on them in their entirety from beginning to end, it's very easy, I think, to say, oh, it ended on this date because that's when I broke up or that's when we had that big fight. But if you're really self-aware or listening to Beck, I don't know, on your back porch, you can think, well, actually, I really think it ended months before that when I did this for the first time or I did this for the last time. And it's saying goodbye to a relationship in phases like that really, I don't know, that's what I thought of when I heard this, and it's one of my favorite songs on this album. It really shook me because when I think about friendships that have ended or just changed, or relationships that have been irreparably changed, when did that change begin? If we're really honest with ourselves, it wasn't when you say the words goodbye. It was probably a long time before, and all of that. And I combined with this really cool guitar, the change to the guitar that happens kind of, I want to say it's at the bridge. It's kind of the midpoint of the song. I really thought that was really a neat touch because it added this kind of delicate tingy to it, tinniness that was really pleasant, even though you're listening to something that was kind of heart-wrenching.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a beautiful, like I said, kind of little poem of these metaphors, and I really like, what you're saying there, Michaela, that it's kind of telling this thing of remembering all of these instances where you're like, oh yeah, that was the first time that I didn't do the normal routine kind of a thing, and I think that's very kind of tragic and beautiful at the same time. Speaking of which, we get into track number 5, Blue Moon, which was the first single from the album. It actually came out about a month before the album, I think, to kind of promote and get people ready for the album to come out. The first line of this says, "I'm so tired of being alone," which is the most absolutely like crushing, the way that Beck kind of delivers that, and it just is coming off of like the heart wrench from the last one, and you're like, oh my gosh, my heart is not going to be able to take this for sure. Apparently, the song had a lot of inspiration from the biographies of Elvis Presley, talking about kind of the end of his life and his career and things there, and probably also a tragic tale of loneliness there for Elvis Presley too. There's some mandolin in the song, which gives it a little bit of character, and I think this song is really just kind of examining the loneliness of this particular morning that Beck is telling us about.
Yeah. I mean, I really want to believe that this was an entire experience that we kind of joined Beck through, or within ourselves. And so, you juxtapose this, saying goodbye and then being like, well, now I am alone. And I might have felt alone before, but now I'm really alone. And how awful and sad that, you've kind of moved on from that and you've said goodbye. And so now you're really experiencing what true aloneness is. And being alone, a lot of people are fine with that. They don't mind being lonely and being alone. I think you have choices in life where you can be alone and by yourself, or you could feel alone and be with others. But this song, I didn't know that there could have been meaning, or this could have been derived from Beck's take on Elvis, but that makes all the sense in the world when I see some of this. See the turncoat on his knees, a vagabond that no one sees. When a moon is throwing shadows, you can't save the ones you've caught in battle. And that's really riveting when you think of it from that perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's starting to get into kind of the more tragicness of that. And Michaela, you pointed out, kind of in the first track, Morning, that you can look at it pretty, you can choose to look at it optimistically, or you can choose to look at it very pessimistically. But I think, kind of in the telling of the story here, that obviously it's taking a very, very pessimistic turn as these songs like continue to get darker and darker as we slide down into the depths of that. And it's getting, kind of to the crux of it here before we take our album break with number 6, Unforgiven. There's this dreamy kind of phase effect here on the synthesizer, which is really cool. Kind of effect sound for the synthesizer guitars, stuff like that. I really like the lines here. Just let the engine run till there's nothing left except the damage done. Right? You just keep letting your relationships or whatever just kind of burn until there's literally nothing else. And in an album here that's dealing with regret and remorse kind of throughout, kind of this first telling here, the idea of being somewhere unforgiven almost feels like the most scathing kind of self-indictment, I think.
Yeah, I remember very vividly listening to this song, and I was going through some beautiful countryside, and I was like, man, this is really tough because if you were in a place that's unforgiven, I always think of like the Wild West. You're in the desert, you're in this wasteland, which was not where we were, but it kind of felt like it. Number one, we were in horrible traffic. And number two, this song, I mean, when you think about a relationship and you kind of overlay that and create this as a metaphor for a relationship that is not going well, there are so many people that end up saying, well, I'm just gonna ride this till it dies. I'm gonna ride that wave all the way through. And unfortunately, many times it's not a wave. It is literally an engine that's on fire. And that's really kind of where this took me. It was very much jumping off the cliff into some very dark, heavy spots for sure. Somewhere unforgiven, time will wait for you. Like, will, be as you get older, right? And life is moving away. I think about friendships or relations that have said, hey, I need to figure out what's going on with my current relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm going to run out of time. And the older you get, the more that becomes more intrinsically in your head. Like, you're not 15 and you're not 20 anymore. And so like, if you're not happy, what do? Do you continue to let the engine run till there's nothing left? Or do you get off the train? Like, what do you do? I really wanted to hate this song because it's such a downer. But I also really think that the aside from the vocals, I really thought that kind of sweeping beginning was really special. And again, these songs kind of all bleed into each other. I don't feel like there's a beginning or ending, and that's why it was really hard to go back and like just revisit a song for me after hearing it the way that it was probably created for, just to listen to it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk about it here. Actually, now is a good time to talk about it because Beck knew that these songs are starting to get pretty heavy. They're going to continue to be pretty heavy. So we need to take an album break, Michaela, for our own sort of hearts.
Yeah.
Our hearts are breaking too much right now. So let's take our album break here. So let's see. So it had been 6 years since Modern Guilt, Beck's previous album, had been released. His contract with Interscope Records had finished. He'd finished making all the records that he was signed up to make for Interscope. So no one knew if Beck was going to do anything else ever again. Beck included. At the time, he was like, I don't know if I'm going to do more music. Do I need to do more music? Does the world want more, Beck music? Kind of at this kind of crossroads sort of thing. So but I mean, Beck had done 8 albums, plus, there were some early kind of mixtape demo albums there. I think 3 of those, so like 11 albums. He's won Grammys now. He's gotten the adoration from other artists. What was left to do? So what does he do? He goes and he says he starts writing music and decides to make kind of a companion piece to 2008 Sea Change. I think I might have said 2002 earlier, so oops. That's okay. So this Yeah, so meant to be kind of a companion piece to that. And Sea Change is a beautiful album. It's the same kind of dreamy, but it's a little bit more, I don't know, not like up tempo, but it's a little bit more, has a little bit more rock and roll kind of roots to it, but same kind of vibe here. And I mean to one day is to listen to these back to back and see if that changes how I feel about them. So Morning Phase, it releases in 2014. It debuts at number 3 on the U.S. Billboard charts, and it wins 3 Grammys, including the big one, Album of the Year. It won Best Rock Album and Best Engineered Album. And at that Grammys, there was some things. There were some things, Michaela. I don't know if you remember. I don't know how closely you follow the Grammys, but Beck beat Beyonce for the album Beyonce that year, which was a surprise to everyone, including Beck. including Kanye West, who went up onto stage and basically said as much while Beck was receiving his award, because I guess that's what Kanye does, is complain about things that are that are winning. What I do like, he did it kind of jokingly, because he'd done it to Taylor Swift before, like in 2008 or
Right.
something like that. I don't
Yeah.
remember. Um, but his statement was that Beck should respect artistry, which is really funny because, at the time when they announced the award winners, they go through kind of the other nominees, and there are like 5,000 people that worked on them. They're like, and here's Morning Phase by Beck, written, produced, recorded by Beck. So I thought that was kind of funny. And no one else really shared that same sentiment, Michaela, because apparently other artists do respect Beck, and vice versa. So Beck has collaborated with Lady Gaga on her album Joanne. He collaborated with all of the remaining members of Nirvana to perform "The Man Who Sold the World" at the next year's Grammys, to pay homage to David Bowie, which is a Nirvana David Bowie cover there. Performed with Dave Grohl and St. Vincent at 2020 fundraising event. He's produced for Cage the Elephant, the Gorillaz, Paul McCartney, the Chemical Brothers, and Pharrell Williams, who actually was also nominated for Best Album of the Year, right, for his album
Right. Yeah.
Girl. He also, a couple of the other ones, Beyonce's Beyonce, I said, and Ed Sheeran's X. Yeah, Pharrell Williams produced all three of those albums, lost to Beck, but then would go and produce Beck's 2019 album, which I think is pretty neat. See, even Pharrell Williams, who lost to Beck, knew the genius of Beck. So I kind of like that little twist there. So that's a little bit kind of about the album. I think it sold about 500,000 copies, something like that. So not like mind blowing in terms of album sales or anything like that, but it was pretty impactful in terms of who like the artist was and his respect. Plus, Michaela, it got us out to go see Beck. I've seen Beck a couple of times, but you and I saw Beck together.
We did. We did. That might have been one of our first concerts. And I remember very clearly we were sitting at a picnic table having a beer, and your beautiful bride was like, "I cannot wait. This is going to be so much fun. I'm going to dance and dance and dance." And I was like, "Yeah." And then they opened with this sweeping kind of big. It was very atmospheric, right? And I was not prepared, and I was like, this is not going to be, I mean, we still danced, but I was like, this is not going to be what I thought it was. It was a much more kind of intimate experience, even though it felt very intimate, even though it was in a really big outdoor stadium. Well, maybe not really big. Would we say that that's a medium sized? For
Yeah,
those of for any, is it medium sized? I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't like the gardens, but it was an outdoor space, and it felt like, for the bigness of what you saw and what you had on stage, really, it was something it so intimate and small, but it really shook your core. I think the sound engineering was amazing, because some of these, when you're talking about this atmospheric feel and sound, it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt my ears. It shook me, but it didn't, like, where you have bass that you can feel in your bones like 3 weeks later, like, it didn't have that. And it still felt like this umptious, blankety, like, wall of sound that just reverberated off of everything. And I remember feeling just very lucky, because that was the first, and that has been the only time that I have seen Beck.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've seen Beck twice. We actually saw him in, I want to say it was 2016, and we went, my wife and I, because Weezer was opening for Beck, and we were big fans of Weezer. And we knew Beck, right? Two turntables and a microphone. Everyone knows that. Everyone our age definitely knows that song, right? Those songs, Devil's Haircut, all that kind of stuff. So we're like, oh yeah, we can go see Weezer, and then we'll see Beck. That'll be good. We know some of those Beck songs. That'll be pretty good. And then Beck was like so like outstanding live, like totally like blew Weezer out of the water. Weezer is great. I've seen them a couple of times as well, but Beck put on this, just this fantastic show. So when he was coming back, we rallied the troops, right? We got you and your husband. We got our friends Jake and Karina. Congratulations on your new marriage. We were just at this past weekend. And we all went to see to see Beck. And my big fear was that my wife, who absolutely, just adored that first concert we went to, said, you got to go see Beck because it's mind blowing. It's amazing. He's so great and has so much energy and stuff like that. And then on a side note, Cage the Elephant opened for Beck. And if you ever get to go see Cage the Elephant, you should do that. Mark out
Yeah,
some time to go see that because they're
do it.
incredible. So they were performing together. And then, yeah, hopefully Beck did not disappoint because spectacular musician, spectacular, kind of the stagecraft of Beck is really good. And I don't know, just kind of this next level genius kind of character. So been interesting to see him a couple of times. I think he's back on tour now this year with Phoenix. Maybe I don't know how long that's running for, but that would be a good show too on a side note. So I don't know, Michaela, we talked a little bit about it at the beginning here, and we're going to get back into the album here in just a second. Obviously, I don't think you'd probably ever listened to this album. And there were 4 singles from the album, but I don't think you could probably pick them out. I don't think that the singles did particularly well because this isn't really an album where you're just like, ooh, I want to go listen to Blackbird Jane.
Right,
so.
right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I remember being a little not confused, but I remember kind of ticking off in my head. There were a couple songs during the concert that I was like, I don't know if I know this. And I remember asking you about it, and you were like, well, it would have been from this album or this album or this album. And so I remember listening to Beck to kind of prep for the concert. And because again, I wasn't a huge, I was a fan, but I wasn't like a huge fan. I knew all of the stuff that had kind of come out when we were, in our early teens, right?
Mhm.
But so I definitely listened to this album in, I don't know, ad nauseum during this past weekend, trying to prepare for the podcast. And I was really, I don't know, I think Beck is really special because he creates these soundscapes that are really harrowing as a person. And if you're sitting there and you can get as deep or as light into it as you want. But the fact that he can do that on a stage from a concert perspective is also really special, because there are some amazing artists that are not amazing in concert. And then there's some artists that are amazing in concert, but they don't seem to do very well outside of the concert experience. And he's very special because of, as you said, the way that they engineered the sounds, the way that they presented kind of on stage, the look and feel of the concert. I don't know. It's really an interesting experience. And it's one of the reasons why, even if you're not a fan of Beck's music or this album in particular, because it's a little different, there's still an appreciation that that you should definitely have.
Exactly. It's like going to like an art museum of music here in this instance, and it's pretty beautiful stuff. But to get back into the album here now a little bit, Michaela, like I'd mentioned, kind of before we took the album break there, these songs just keep getting darker and darker as we go. And track number 7, Wave, is going to carry down that path a little bit more darker here even yet. It's got some opening strings that are gorgeous and tragic here. Does a really good job on this album, I think, of utilizing the strings to convey kind of that melancholy tone that he's trying to convey. And this song here in particular, it almost unfolds kind of like a religious hymnal, because his voice is kind of echoing itself kind of throughout. But the subject matter here is anything but religious hymnal glory sort of subject. This is really dark, and it's kind of like towing that line, that very thin, kind of very scary line between being alone with your thoughts and being by yourself, which could not go great. But Wave here, it's a beautiful, haunting song.
Yeah. The hollowness. I put in my notes, I've never thought I would think or look at the ocean and feel so lonely. I mean, it is this idea of this wave of nothing. And it's almost a relief, I think, at the end, when he just keeps saying isolation over and over again. It's like, yes, I want to be alone. I am alone. Let's get it over with. Kind of, I don't know, this, I don't know. It's like a pressure valve release of darkness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I can say much more about it. I mean, it's, and it's the bottom. It's the very bottom. It's
Yeah, I
very
like
bottom of the album for me.
yeah, I like what you just said there, the pressure relief valve, because yeah, it's definitely kind of this simmering thing, not in like volatileness, but just in, I don't know, kind of this place of depression almost, which is, like I said, it's tragically beautiful. But we are going to start to uptick a little bit here, like maybe that was as dark of the depths as we needed to explore, and we're going to start, making light of some things, Michaela. So track number 8, "Don't Let Go." It's almost kind of like this acoustic song, kind of through the first verse. It's just Beck and an acoustic guitar, and then some more instruments kind of start layering in, right? You get pianos, you get drums kind of coming in, you get like this call and answer kind of section that Beck is singing and basically responding to himself, and then you get the strings kind of coming in here towards the end. Structurally on the album, this is one of my favorite songs. I like the composition of it. I like the way that it's kind of building these different layers to it, and I like here the idea of asking for forgiveness or trying to reconcile, especially after these first 7 tracks are basically, kind of on this downward slide, but you get to "Don't Let It Go." You hit like rock bottom at Wave, and then you kind of, maybe that's where you needed to get. You needed to hit rock bottom before you could ask, for some forgiveness. And I think that makes it, here in this placement, very purposeful. Obviously, Beck here on this album, but it feels very impactful, coming on the heels of Wave, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. In my head, I thought about this relationship that I thought was totally going horribly, and now we were in the death throes. Like we tried to make it work. We'd set the car on fire. It still wasn't happening. And now I thought about this person being hit by a wave of isolation, and to then this is the beginning of kind of picking up the pieces of that, and saying, okay, well, what were the lessons that we learned? What can we do differently, not only with ourselves but with others? What can we expect? I really love the lyrics. These are some faults we found, hollowed out from the years. Don't let them wear you out. Don't let them turn your mind inside out. Don't let it go. Don't let it go away. I really love that. That might be my favorite lyrics on this entire album, because at the end of the day, if this is a relationship, I mean, this is a different journey for anybody who's listening. But for me, I'm a romanticist. So of course I paired this as a romantic relationship that was ending. Taking the bits of that and learning from it is really the beginning of your own inner healing journey, and the beginning of healing for others. And then, yes, like you've said, that asking of forgiveness and being able to forgive yourself and forgive the other person and kind of move on. This to me starts to feel like the rebraiding, right? So we've had this complete undoing of a relationship, and then figuring out how the fabric is gonna work going forward.
Yeah, exactly. And then, kind of at the end of this tale, all you're left is with is a little reminder, a little memento of kind of this journey that you've been on in track number 9, Blackbird Chain. It's got a little bit more of kind of like this California kind of vibe to Blackbird Chain, so it's a little bit more upbeat sounding. It's not really like a surf rock sort of a thing, but it kind of is going kind of in that direction, as as aggressive in it as any of these songs are going to sound on this album, which is very very melancholy for sure. I really like the symbolism here of this Blackbird Chain, kind of this little trinket, memory of someone or some time or some place in your life, and I kind of like that, as it's kind of like kind of the capstone of this story of waking up in the morning and kind of going through this progression of realizing that this relationship has come to an end, and at the end you just have this little memento of your time together, or your place together, or whatever that was. At least that's how I kind of see what this Blackbird Chain was. So
Yeah, and the lyrics here, I'll never, 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 never refuse you. I mean, I think I think love is something that if it's real, it doesn't really go away. There's just a lot of stuff that gets put on top of it that make it easier for you to forget and see somebody differently. And that's the thing of this little keepsake that you have will always take you right back to when it was good, when you wouldn't have refused them, when you wouldn't have seen them as anything other than this beautiful thing and wonderful human and someone that you love very much. And so that's kind of neat. And I like the idea that it's an SOS. Like, an SOS from an outpost, there is on a common air. Now I could read you a brief account of a last frontier. We could come to understanding what's wrong as right as rain. At rock bottom of a hollowed ground, we stake your claim. So to me, what that was saying was, if we can just remember that part of it when we think about each other. And so, in the future, you wouldn't refuse each other. It still maybe isn't going to be the same relationship. Maybe it's still ended, but I really like that kind of idea of chaining the pieces of garbage back together to make some semblance of something real. I don't know. That's how it visually came to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And to put a pin in that, then we're going to get to track number 10 is Phase, which is another little string kind of interlude piece, which feels very much like the conclusion of the album here. It opens on the same exact string chord being held from Cycle, but Cycle has a little bit more kind of upbeat, positive in the chord progression. This one has a little more kind of downsloped, melancholic chord progression here, but it really feels kind of like the tone of where the album finally got to. It kind of ends on this melancholy here, right? It's not really optimistic, not super tragic, but it just feels kind of like this melancholy kind of thing. You get to Blackbird Chain, and you've kind of come to terms that is how this particular relationship or how this day has gone this morning here, from Morning Phase, which makes then track number 11, Turn Away. It almost sounds like it's out of place on this album. It is real close to sounding like it doesn't belong here, because it's got this little kind of weird intro, but as soon as the intro goes, and it's very brief, just only a second or two, and then Beck starts singing, you're like, Beck is a genius. This makes so much sense to me.
Yeah.
I should never have doubted. I should never said that Phase should have been or sounded like the last song on the album. Because Beck knew that you had this whole tragic tale, but you have to move on, right? Hold the line that fixes you in time, says Beck. It's a beautifully written song, and it's a song about forgiving yourself and forgiving yourself from the weight of your own words, right? We just had this horrible kind of, I don't know, avalanche of emotion that we went through. But Beck knows that we need to be propped back up here at the end of it. It's okay to forgive yourself, even if things go bad.
That's right. And also turn away from the mistakes that you made, right? You don't have to make them again. I don't know. I to me, it was, hey, I didn't feel that this person had moved on or anything, but I did feel that this feeling of, hey, next time next time you get a shot at it, don't do these things, right? Don't self-sabotage, don't don't use this as an excuse to not keep trying. Don't turn away from the sound of your own voice calling no one. Like, I really thought that was genius, and I was right there with you. I thought the album ended, and I was really confused with Turn Away, because I thought that Phase kind of was the bookend, because that's exactly how it sounds. But I love this. It's a little lanyap. He gives us a couple little lanyards of music to take with us, which is probably good, because we were so broken. I don't know. At least I was a hot mess at the end of this album. My God.
Yeah, for sure. You did need a break. True, but there are the three songs, 11, Turn Away, we just talked about, and then number 12, Country Down. So there's kind of like this trilogy here at the end of the song. And the first song, Turn Away, is kind of a song about forgiving yourself. Country Down is a song then about moving on, right? You have to forgive yourself, and then you can move on. It's more of a country type of a song here. There's some harmonica, which is probably like the most bold instrumentation on the album.
Sure.
Like it sounds very bright and vibrant. But I really like it here, as kind of the second piece of this trilogy of songs. And then you get into the third one, the final song, Waking Light. This is a new day. The album leaves us, with kind of a more hopeful awakening, maybe, than we got in Morning. And I think it serves as a great capstone here for this little three song arc that we get. So you got Forgive Yourself, Move On, and then starting over. So what do you think here about our final two pieces, Michaela?
So I really loved the harmonica in Country Down. It kind of woke me up, or in a way, I wasn't asleep, but it kind of it jolted me, right? Where I was like, whoa, what is this?
Mhm.
um, I really love that. And Waking Light, I mean, thank God we got some sort of hope out of this, because I think that this would have been maybe too much. I mean, again, Beck knows what he's doing. He's like, I can't leave them on this desolate journey and leave them in the middle of nowhere. So I really like the very last stanza: when the memory leaves you somewhere you can't make it home, when the morning comes to meet you, open your eyes with waking light. So even in the sense that things are really bad, there's always a reason to open your eyes. Open your eyes. And so yeah, I really thought that this was a great bookend to this experience in general.
Yeah, exactly. It is a great bookend. The song "Waking Light" here, it actually has kind of this fuzzed out sounding guitar at the end, which almost sounds out of place on the album. But I think that it's really neat because it only comes in here for the final just couple of seconds of music that we're getting here in Morning Phase, and it's almost like Beck is like acknowledging the fact that this page has turned for him, and we're going to go to something completely different. The next album is going to be Colors, which is very much more this dance pop sort of album here. So it's like he's given a little wink and a nod that Morning Phase has concluded, and it's time to move on to something else. As an artist who has reinvented himself a bunch of times over the I don't know the 20 plus years that we've had him in our lives for sure. So that is Morning Phase, Michaela. Like I said at the top, I was excited to kind of get your feedback on it because this isn't like a typical album. We talked about Beatles Love, which is kind of this more compilation
Yeah.
thing where you're not pulling stuff off, but this work of art, dare I say, here really can only exist, I think, in an album form. Like none
Yeah.
of you can't pull like any of these pieces out. They all fit together
Right.
too well. But what did you think about it as someone who's more prone to listen to playlists and singles and things like that? What was the experience of listening to this like? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Is it
Oh,
too surreal, or what do you think?
it was amazing. I came into it. And I have to say, I mean, this whole experience with going to music and doing Drink the Music has been amazing in general, because of stuff that maybe I never would have listened to. So it's been really educational and life changing for me. So for that, I will always be grateful. But in for this particular album, it kind of knocked me over with how emotionally absorbed I got into it. And maybe it was because I was able to really focus. We were doing a lot of traveling, so I was able to seriously just sit and listen in a very different way, and listen to it from beginning to end, and then start over again after having like a minute to calm my poor nerves because it was hard. It was very hard. I definitely agree with you. This album is meant to be experienced as an album. I don't even know how the singles would have. I don't think I heard any singles on the radio. Number one, I don't know what radio station I listened to would have ever played these. And that's not a knock on the songs at all. I just don't know how that would have worked. And number two,
Mhm.
I don't have any idea how someone would have listened to this and then been able to go back to their regularly scheduled programming of life. I needed a minute. My poor husband was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just listening to Beck. Leave me alone." Like, it's fine. He was like, "Okay." I mean, I was a hot mess. Listening to it, and then I went back in for more. I think that this is a perfect album for someone who is able and willing to take the time to listen to it in its entirety. Even if you're not a Beck fan, if you've never heard Beck, if you don't even know who we're talking about because you're 20, whatever, give it a shot, because this is truly, I think, when we talked about like psychedelic rock in the 60s, where people would sit and they do like illegal drugs, and just kind of listen to music and let that expand their mind. This was definitely that, minus the illegal drug aspect.
Mhm.
Could have
Mhm.
been, but I'm a law-abiding citizen. So but it could be that for anybody who would like it to be, because it definitely changed my paradigm and had me think about all sorts of different things, and not just because of the lyrics. And I love lyrics, and I can speak to them better than the musicality of it because of my lack of musical background. But the lyrics are amazing, but the musicality of this is also very sweeping and just like this atmospheric synthesized sound, it really creates an entire space for you to feel, which is so different than so many other artists out there, that create good music, but just a different experience. And that's what makes music so great, is that it all can hit you different. Now, in a month, maybe I'll listen to this and be like, it's okay. But for whatever it was, whenever it was definitely something. And I think that is also part of Beck's genius.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that is Beck's Morning Phase. So thank you so much out there for listening to this. We hope that you've enjoyed checking out Morning Phase. If it's an album that you're familiar with, it's a good time to go back and revisit. If you've never listened to Morning Phase, carve an hour out of your day or out of your weekend and put this on. Sit quietly, have yourself a Light the Beam cocktail, and just get into it and see what sort of emotional journey you can get into. I think is safe to say there with this one. So yeah, do that. Do all those things. Let us know what you think about the cocktail. Let us know what you think about Beck. Let us know if you think we should have done Odelay instead, which was something that I kind of thought, to be honest, when when I was like, oh, we're going to listen to Morning Phase. I don't know how that's going to go over. So I'm glad that you enjoyed your time with it, Michaela. So let us know what you think about Beck. Send us pictures, do all that stuff. You can do it on our Instagram and Threads and Blue Sky. It's at Drink the Movies, and on Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. Go to the website www.drinkthemovies.com. You can find episode recaps, pictures of our cocktails, all that stuff there. And you can go to our Patreon.com/Drink the Movies if you want to vote for the next album. That's how we ended up doing Morning Phase here this particular week. We got bonus episodes, cocktail episodes, all sorts of stuff over there. It's a great way to support the podcast. And the best way to support the podcast is to make sure that you like and subscribe. Michaela, where can they do that?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, X. We're on iHeartRadio now, anywhere where Spotify podcasts are distributed and supported. We're really easy to find. Wherever you're listening to us right now, I guarantee that if you look down at your rectangle, there's a subscribe button. You should press that button if you're liking what you're hearing. And if you don't tell anybody about us. But if you're loving what you're hearing, tell everybody you know. Give us a 5-star review. Share all of our stuff on social media. It really helps us build the community of cocktail lovers and artistic lovers of music and movies alike. This is about the best job I could ever have. I can't speak for Brian, but it's definitely the best thing I've ever done. So we couldn't do it without you fans and listeners. So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely. So that's going to wrap it up here for Beck. Stay tuned. Next week, we've got a really good one coming. One of Michaela's favorites. She's going to be excited to talk about that. The one, the only, or the five, the only. I don't know how you do that. Fleetwood Mac. We're talking about next week, and a special bonus Fleetwood Mac cocktail coming to Patreon. So make sure you go and check that out if you are a fan of the Fleetwood Mac stuff. And who wasn't, Michaela? Who wasn't, to be for sure. So
nobody
thank you so
I
much
know.
for nobody
I know.
Nobody I want to know for sure. So yeah, stay tuned for that and mix up a cocktail, and we'll talk to you next time on
Drink
the Music.
The
I'm so tired of being alone.
Oh my God.
Man, none of these lyrics are particularly hopeful to say here at the end, are they?
Dude, at the end, gosh. Yeah. Open your eyes. Turn away. Don't let it go. I mean, there were
It's a new morning. It's a new morning.
It's a new morning.